Welcome to the Wired for Success podcast, your show for ambitious, mission-driven entrepreneurs who want to build million-dollar businesses without sacrificing their health, relationships, or happiness, who understand that in order to build their empire, they need a solid foundation, and that the more they are thriving, the more their business is thriving too. This show brings you the very best from science, self-development, and entrepreneurship to set you up for sustainable success. Hi, I'm Claudia Garbutt, the scientist turned mindset and high-performance coach for entrepreneurs, and I help you get wired for success. This episode is brought to you by Pulsetto, the vagus nerve stimulator that biohacks your parasympathetic nervous system. Let's face it, we can't avoid stress in our lives, but we can learn how to handle it better. And in order to do that, we need to relearn how to switch our body's programming from the constant fight-or-flight mode back to the rest and repair mode. And you're probably thinking, that's certainly easier said than done when you A, don't have much time, and B, don't know how to do that. And that's where the Pulsetto device can be super helpful. It uses electrostimulation to help you activate your parasympathetic nervous system in as little as 4 minutes a day. 86% of users report feeling calmer and less stressed after using Pulsetto, and I can vouch for that. I've had some trouble with sleep, therefore I especially love the 10-minute sleep setting that helps me relax and fall asleep faster. And as we all know, good sleep is so important. So if you have trouble relaxing and you've been looking for a way to improve your sleep, why not give this a try? For more info, check out episode 208 of the podcast, in which I interview the co-founder of Pulsetto. And for a 10% discount on your order, go to pulsetto.tech/wiredforsuccess. That's pulsetto.tech/wiredforsuccess. Enjoy. Without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Wired for Success podcast, where we talk about all things science, self-development, and entrepreneurship that help you get to that next level of success in your life and business. My guest today is Oli Genn-Bash, the Fungi Consultant. From co-founding the University of Kent Canterbury Psychedelic Society in 2009 to co-organizing multiple cultivation workshops, giving talks at the All Things Fungi Festival, providing consultations as Head of Mycology at Product Earth, and founding the Fungi Consulting, working with fungi and spreading awareness of these integral sources of well-being has been the latest stage in a long journey where Oli has utilized the benefits of functional mushrooms to manage his own health conditions. Now, I'm super interested to learn more about this. So welcome, Oli, and thank you so much for being on my show today.
Oh, thank you, Claudia. I really appreciate coming on.
I'm looking forward to this. Oli, I know it's not a fair question, but I'm going to ask anyway. Do you have a favorite mushroom? And if so, what makes that mushroom so special to you?
Yes, so I actually do. I know a lot of people talk about lots of different mushrooms that they're using, but for me, really at the moment, it's cordyceps. I've just fallen in love with this mushroom, and the main thing is the energy. It's been a real game changer for energy, motivation, both mental energy and the real noticeable physical energy with muscles, with fatigue and tiredness. I don't like to say things a magic bullet, but it's up there, you know.
Okay, tell us more about cordyceps. So what do people need to know about this mushroom?
So the interesting thing about cordyceps is that it actually grows in the wild by infesting or taking over an insect host. And there's around 350 different species of cordyceps, all which have their own specific insect larvae that they infest. So there's a real close parasitic symbiotic relationship between this mushroom and insects in nature. Now, the wild harvested cordyceps is becoming a bit rarer, and now it's being cultivated in home cultivation settings, lab settings. But the history of the cordyceps mushroom is from Tibet. So Tibetan yak herders on the mountains would see the yaks nibbling at these cordyceps, and it seemed that they had a lot more energy, a lot more stamina, able to deal with the high altitudes much better. And so similar to, how we discovered coffee, this, seeing how it was being used in nature, gave rise to its introduction into Tibetan and Chinese folklore about 350 years ago. Some people say it's been used for closer to maybe about 1,000 years, but the recent evidence is more like 300, 350 years, which is still quite a long time to have been using a medicinal mushroom. And the main thing about it is this compound within cordyceps called cordycepin. And cordycepin mimics a compound in our body called adenosine triphosphate. And adenosine triphosphate is what seems to power the cells. So cordyceps is this amazing mushroom where I found personally, on an anecdotal level, when I deal with a lot of fatigue, and when I'm in that low fatigue state, if I consume some cordyceps, it feels like there's an extra tank of fuel somewhere that I didn't know about. And I think when you look at it on the biological level, what it's doing to our cells, where it's causing because it mimics this adenosine triphosphate so closely, our bodies recognize it, and our bodies then release the ATP, which then provides our cells with more energy. And that allows more oxygenated blood to actually get into our muscles, reduce our response to lactic acid. So we are able to really go that one step further with them.
So interesting. And I mean, they look weird, right? When you see the pictures, it's the caterpillars, right? The caterpillars, or it looks
caterpillar
like
fungus. Yeah. So I've actually got it as the background on my computer screen because I love it so much. And it is just the cordyceps coming out the top of a caterpillar.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like something that you would say, yum, I'm gonna try that.
Yeah, so it definitely can be a bit off-putting when we think about the mushroom infecting the host of a larvae. It certainly is weird. It certainly, I think now that things are being put into capsule form and supplement form, they're a lot easier to take. I think it might be a different situation if you're wild harvesting the cordyceps yourself and, preparing them, extracting them, doing all of that. It might be a bit more icky.
So what's your protocol? How do you take it? How much do you take? Do you take it in a capsule form, or what do you take?
So for me, what I found is capsule form is the best, because what I really look for is a high quality extract. And the high quality extracts are coming either in a tincture form or a powder form. I don't consume alcohol, so I will get the powder. Now, the problem with a high quality extract powder is because you have these extracted compounds called polysaccharides, which are carbohydrate sugars, they're actually quite sticky. So what I've found is when I've had the powder, it'll often absorb just moisture from the air. So, and that's a particular type in terms of the extract ratio. I look for a particular high quality. So I've had to now buy it in capsules, but that's really good because then I know the particular brand that I have has been tested. So, the amount of the active compound per, 400 milligrams in a capsule. So then I'll take 2 to 3 of those a day. So we're talking roughly 1,000 milligrams of cordyceps extract. That's an 8-to-1 extract. Now, the extract ratio is a really interesting thing because if you think about just numbers in general, you see high numbers and you think, the brain automatically thinks, oh, that's good. So we see products on the market that say 15-to-1 extract. And the story behind that will be, we've taken 15 kilograms of our expertly grown mushroom and we've extracted that down into 1 kilogram of extract powder. And isn't that amazing? We've put loads of it into this. So you think, oh, brilliant. It's had a lot gone into it. I was talking to my friend he's a researcher at UCL doing research on turmeric, licorice, and CBD as well. And he said, what you need to look at is actually what's called the drug to extract ratio, which is something which I've only spoken to him about. I haven't spoken to any mushroom companies about this drug to extract ratio in this much detail. But what it means is you want to look for something which has a lower extract ratio, because your starting material then means it actually has a higher concentration of the active compounds because you've needed to use less. And when you consider mushrooms are mostly, there's a lot of fiber and water, you actually want less. So I look for the smaller extract ratios and something that has been dual extracted with hot water and alcohol to make sure that it gets out the water soluble and alcohol soluble compounds.
Can you share your favorite brands for that?
Yeah, so the one I use at the moment is Pure Fungi. And for cordyceps, that is the only one that I've found of. So there's two strains of cordyceps on the market. There's Cordyceps sinensis and Cordyceps militaris. Cordyceps sinensis is the wild harvested, so there's some interesting things here, but the Cordyceps militaris is the one which is cultivated, but it's also considered slightly a novel food in the UK. So it's harder to find. So I've only found one brand that has Cordyceps militaris at an 8-to-1 extract, which has been extracted with hot water and alcohol. And that ticks all the boxes that I want to find in an extract. So that's Pure Fungi. And their cordyceps is really good. There's also Navi Organics, who they sell cordyceps which has been cultivated using a substrate which includes silkworm larvae. So it's not wild harvested, but it means it's been attempted to be grown in a similar sort of situation as it would be in the wild. So there's an argument, okay, if you're cultivating cordyceps in a lab setting and you're using a substrate which is made out of something like soy, are you getting the same profile as you would do from something that's being grown on something that has protein and, different amino acids and other stuff going on inside of it?
Has anyone tested that so far? Are you aware of any studies?
I'm not sure. The testing's quite difficult. Testing is quite expensive, and you'll have certain companies that say you should be doing certain types of testing, and other companies which would do other types of testing, which is cheaper, but you don't necessarily find the specific compounds. So this is a big topic of conversation in and amongst the mushroom companies, who's got what kind of testing. Okay, you're testing for this, well, we're testing for that, but your test isn't good enough to be testing for that. There's a lot of bit of mudslinging going on.
Yeah, so interesting. Now, what's an underrated or maybe lesser known mushroom that people should be paying more attention to?
So the really interesting one is the oyster mushroom. It's an unsung hero of the immune boosting mushroom world, because it's often seen as a culinary mushroom, and it is. It's a very, very tasty mushroom, really easy to grow. You can buy a grow kit from a shop, but even if you're doing it with the spores at home, it's pretty easy to grow. It grows in a couple of weeks, quite difficult to mess up. And there's been studies shown that the golden oyster strain in particular has really high levels of a compound called ergothioneine. And ergothioneine, I think it's a plant sterol, or a fungi sterol, which is really good for boosting the immune system. So, yeah, even like the basic button mushrooms that you get in the supermarket. I was reading a study about prostate cancer and button mushrooms. So,
really?
Yeah, so there's really interesting, I think they're so untapped, and there's certain mushrooms which gain more popularity because they're a bit more exciting. They've been called things like the mushroom of immortality and these types of things. So
the reishi or however you
reishi is yeah.
Yeah, they are so interesting. Now that you mention it, I still have some oyster mushrooms in the fridge, so I know what's for dinner today.
Amazing.
So when did your love for mushrooms start?
My love for mushrooms, to be quite open, started from my experience with the psychedelic fungi, and that would have been 15 years ago, 16 years ago now. So that was, that really brought me into not just the world of fungi, but the world of the forest, the world of nature, that real deep nature connection that is really important, particularly, here in the UK, where there is such a connection with the trees and mushrooms and all the plants and herbalism and all this stuff. So those experiences really brought me into this reconnecting with nature, but it really opened me up to the whole world of fungi. And I think more specifically for the medicinal fungi, probably in the last between 5 to 10 years or so.
Interesting.
Yeah, my friend who's that researcher at UCL was one of the first people to give me some functional mushrooms. He gave me some turkey tail mushroom and said, brew this up in a tea for an hour, and I did, and it was, kind of tasty, but
yeah, I mean, personally, I use functional mushrooms like lion's mane for brain health, but I haven't tried any of the psychedelic mushrooms so far. But I'm curious, so can you share some of your experiences with the psychedelic mushrooms and how those experiences impacted your life?
Yeah, so for me personally, there really has been a lot in terms of self-development, self-reflection. As I mentioned, that reconnection with nature, that was really important for taking control over my health and fitness, taking joy in going out for walks and really engaging with the physical world. It was very important for that. I've had a diagnosis of fibromyalgia for nearly the past 10 years or so. And the energy that I've had from these experiences, the sort of wonderment and joy of being outside in the world has been amazing for engaging with my body in this holistic sense, this mind, body,
Unity.
axis, unity. Yeah. And, the therapeutic benefits, the healing benefits, that is really being spoken about now and being more brought into the mainstream ways of thinking about mental health. For me, there was a real sense, a very clear message of healing and restoration, and the mushrooms being able to open up these parts inside of me that it was like showing a mirror, and not being able to hide away from things that needed work on, which I think is the real power of these mushrooms when you engage with them in this, they're an organic medium that you're taking, right? So they're helping you to kind of shift your perception slightly away from the human way of thinking about things, which can be quite useful because sometimes we get stuck in our human ways of trying to make sense of things, and actually the mushrooms can give you a break from that and help you to reframe. So I think, the benefits that come from the neuroplasticity, the rewiring of neural circuits, and helping with things like depression, it's been, massively useful. Dealing with grief, it's been, the biggest thing, really, really big. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some really interesting studies going on now with PTSD and stuff, right? Where they use psychedelic mushrooms or psychedelics in general.
Yeah, lots of different psychedelics, MDMA, psilocybin mushrooms, ibogaine now, which is from the iboga plant in West Africa. So yeah, there does seem to be a lot of promise with these plants and fungi that are helping people to access traumatic memories and be able to process them, because in that moment they weren't able to process them, and it's done some wiring in their brain that is not benefiting them. And so they're able to, with these experiences, create a new story around that and understand how, because I think, a lot of the time the PTSD manifests in people's responses to situations that can trigger them. So I think the psychedelics have a real benefit in terms of reframing and reflection. It allows you to then respond to situations better, which can then make you a better partner, a better husband, wife, family member, whatever, colleague, all this kind of stuff, you're able to actually act in a way which is more flowing rather than necessarily being stuck in those memories.
I mean, that sounds super interesting, but I guess there are also people who have what you call a bad trip, or those whose mental health can really deteriorate when they use psychedelic mushrooms, right? So who should not be experimenting with those mushrooms?
Yeah, absolutely. And you do raise a really important point. It's something I've just been looking at on LinkedIn. And there is a lot of spiritual bypassing that goes on within the wider psychedelic communities, where people time and time again will say there's no such thing as a bad trip. Everything is just a lesson, which I understand where they're coming from. But there are situations that people get themselves into which are objectively dangerous and bad, and where they have, taken too much or taken the wrong thing. So I do think people who have had, and it's a knife edge, because psychedelics are being used to manage and treat mental health conditions, but also they can really exacerbate. So, people that have a history of psychosis, schizophrenia, these types of things, if you're just going, if you're just in a really difficult rut that, everything feels unstable in your life, it might be useful to think about the ways in which you can work on gaining a bit more stability before entering into a mind-altering experience.
Yeah, I think that's really important, to have that awareness that maybe you shouldn't do it alone. Maybe you should get some professional help, for instance, right?
Yeah, there are a lot of those options. There's a lot, not necessarily here in the UK, but there are places people, if you have the resources, you can go to places in South America or Spain or the Netherlands where there are, or the USA, where there's legislation which allows for this psychedelic healing, psychedelic therapy, or, going on retreats. I had, a beautiful experience in South America, taking the San Pedro cactus, and that was very well taken care of. It was very gentle. It was very well organized. And, for some people that were in the group, it might have been their first time having that kind of experience. And I think it is, it is really important to have a safe container. Now, that safe container might also be the community around you, the friends that you have, the experienced people, the quote unquote experienced elders that are in your community that have an understanding of these substances. So I certainly don't want to say the only place you can take them is this place or that place. There's something for everyone with psychedelics.
And is that something that you help your clients with as well? Or is that something that you don't touch with your clients, like the psychedelic mushrooms?
It is if I'm asked. So on my website, when I express my story, I'm quite open about my involvement in the UK psychedelic space. I've been involved in the academic, educational side of things, the advocacy side of things. So for me, that is important. And if people come to me and say, hey, I would like some advice, I've had a lot of friends do it. I've had a few clients ask me, I'm not going to say no, because there used to be a lot of really good, solid information on the internet. There are these sites called Erowid and Shroomery, which used to be sort of back in the golden age of the free internet, where you could access things quite easily. They were a portal that you would go to and you could find out quite specific information quite quickly. Now, when you search for psychedelic information, it tends to be, there's been so much volume of information regarding clinical trials and retreats and this kind of stuff. That tends to be what you see. So for me, the reason why we started the Student Psychedelic Society in 2009 was to be able to provide people with this open and honest advice. So yeah, certainly if people come to me for advice about microdosing or even macrodosing, if people want to have that more in-depth conversation about the lessons and the therapeutic healing that you can have from psychedelic mushrooms, as well as, you know, the microdosing, integrating it into your general regime. I'm really open to all of that, because I think the mushrooms and psychedelics have their benefits in all these different places.
Now, if we zoom out a little bit, how do you see functional mushrooms transforming productivity, leadership, creativity, and even maybe something like company culture in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so this is something I've been thinking about quite a lot and talking to people a lot, and wondering ways in which I've been working on developing a course or a workshop for people in these scenarios. And it might be me being a bit ahead of the game or jumping the gun, but I feel like when I've spoken to different people in the corporate space that might be in different countries, there's a certain culture and a way of doing things and a way of talking about things. And I know in general, you know, people tend to just speak in English, which is unfortunate, but it's kind of the way the world has gone, right, where our language has dominated the world. But so everyone's speaking in English, but then they have maybe different ways of doing things or thinking about things, or the speed in which they do things, or the efficiency in how they do things, or the different processes, the different systems that they have. There might be, you know, you're doing things from one country to another and it takes a long time, or even in the same company, you know, people might be just have a different way of doing things to you. So I thought, well, how about if everyone is on a course of, let's say, lion's mane for a number of weeks, and they're all, you know, we've done personalized consultations for the individual staff members, so we're giving them the right amount of lion's mane to suit them personally, but then everyone is consuming lion's mane, so their productivity ideally is on a similar level. And then let's say we give them cordyceps as well, so they're not feeling stressed out. Are there ways in which we can develop new systems which are based on possibly the systems of the mushrooms, which move a bit slower, the mycelial integrated way of doing things, which isn't necessarily top down, it's more, you know, inside out and along? And can people be in a state where, hey, I'm not stressed out, you're not stressed out, I'm not having to meet your stress with my stress and try and see who's gonna, you know, whose idea is gonna win out. It's actually, okay, I'm not feeling stressed, you're not feeling stressed. That then changes our nervous system, right? We're then not acting in the sympathetic nervous system, we're in parasympathetic, we're not in fight or flight, we're in relax, rest, collaborate. You know, I'm into this idea of emergence. You know, what happens when you get people in a room and something naturally emerges? If you're in this company structure, how does it work if you have a CEO who sets targets and says, okay, I need this done by this quarter and it needs to be at this point, and everyone goes, right, okay, let's go. And then what happens then? As soon as that CEO has left, everyone's cortisol spikes. Everyone's going, right, let's go. Okay, you do that, you do that, you do that. And then, you know, there's different ways different companies do things. But if it was done in the fungi way, and it was like, how would a mushroom do this? Or how would humans do this if we were all integrating mushrooms into our lives? Then I think there's really interesting ways to reimagine not just protocols and systems for yourself, but actually how does that expand out into the wider company?
I love that. Now, as we've mentioned, many high achievers struggle with stress, with burnout, and with cognitive fatigue. So if you had to prescribe, say, a standard mushroom protocol for peak mental performance, what would that look like?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, because all of those things, you know, I imagine all of your listeners really struggle with and are juggling. You know, it becomes this juggling act where you haven't slept well, so the next day you're feeling stressed, and then you don't sleep well because you've been feeling stressed, and then it's never ending. And, you know, for me, the beauty of the functional mushrooms is this, as I said before, with cordyceps, this magic bullet, but it's like a switch to kind of cut out that vicious cycle. And for me, starting the day with a combination of cordyceps and lion's mane. These two mushrooms I'm seeing now being sold together quite a lot, because you have the performance enhancing side of cordyceps, where you're physically not feeling drained. You've actually got more energy. We talk a lot about systems and processes and all these things which exist mentally, but when it comes down to it, we are a physical shell. Yep. So if we take care of the physical shell first, cordyceps are really good for your lungs. So we can utilize cordyceps with breath work, and we can start the day utilizing the lion's mane, traditionally used for meditation. We can use that to sharpen the focus, but not jump straight into, I've got to focus on work, but actually, okay, what's the focus for my morning routine to set myself up for the day, so that all the other things are easy, or just kind of fall in line, just follow that same process. So I would start the day with cordyceps and lion's mane, and then I might have a top up of cordyceps during the day if I'm feeling particularly stressed. I've personally found, because I deal with quite a lot of fatigue, I've personally found I can push my dose of cordyceps and not feel too stimulated, let's say. But some people might find it a bit too overstimulating. So I would also caution against having cordyceps maybe, after early afternoon, because it might act like a coffee where you're just feeling too stimulated. And then I would prescribe reishi for the evening. And again, with the cordyceps, similar with the cordyceps, the reishi doses can be pushed quite a lot for sleep and relaxation. It really does seem to be an amazing mushroom for sleep. And I think if people can have a day where they're not feeling drained from using lion's mane, they're preventing against sort of brain fog and drain and that cognitive fatigue. And then using cordyceps, they're mitigating against the physical fatigue. That then sets them up. Okay, we can nicely go into the reishi, be relaxed. We're not trying to sort of counteract anything. We're just setting ourselves up with the reishi for a nice sleep, to be restored. And then, I would just continue that. In traditional Chinese medicine, they just say, eat mushrooms every day for the rest of your life. So
Sounds like a great protocol. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, would you take them like in a pure form, or would you mix them? Say, for example, in the evening, would you add some ashwagandha or something to the mix for better sleep, or do you just focus on mushrooms alone in the pure form?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, me personally, my cupboard is stocked full of herbal teas.
Same here.
I really am a believer of finding what works for you in terms of like adding different things to your arsenal of beneficial herbs and fungi, because I really do think like the nature is screaming out, and it's like, come on, we've got this whole pharmacopoeia here. So combining something like ashwagandha in the evening. You could also combine valerian, magnesium, magnesium supplements as well. Sage goes well with, there's some companies which do a product which is reishi, magnesium and sage. But certainly, the sort of sleepy time teas like the chamomile and valerian, rooibos even is quite good for relaxation. So you could mix some reishi into that. There's a lot of synergistic herbs, I think, that go well, certainly in the evening.
Yeah, I agree. Now, something that I've experienced when I started to experiment with the mushrooms or with the functional mushrooms is that sometimes your body has to adapt to them. So you maybe shouldn't start with too high a concentration, because it can give you digestive issues. Is that something that you've experienced as well?
Yes, absolutely. I made the mistake of I grew some lion's mane myself,
Oh,
and
nice.
it went really well. And then I did just a hot water extraction,
Mm-hmm.
and because what it essentially made was a stock. So in my
Mm-hmm.
mind, I was like, oh, wow, I've got all this delicious lion's mane stock in the freezer. And I was using it like a stock in soup. And then I made a stew with like quite a lot of this lion's mane. And it was really concentrated. I'd done like a 6-hour hot
Mm-hmm.
water extraction, really got out this good. And it gave both me and my girlfriend quite bad stomach aches. And that's because you've got high concentration of these beta glucans, these
Mm-hmm.
polysaccharides, the carbohydrates. Now they're really useful for helping with your gut bacteria. The immunomodulating benefits of the fungi seems to come from what's happening with your gut bacteria. But
Mm-hmm.
that can, if you have too much of that, it can just be too much. It can just be too hard on your stomach. And I've found it particularly with lion's mane, not necessarily with other mushrooms. I don't know if there's a higher concentration of the beta glucans in lion's mane compared to other mushrooms, but yeah, you've got to watch out. And there is a reason why they put doses on
Yeah.
on these packets. You know, if you are buying a supplement which has been lab tested and it's got, you know, a certain amount of this active compound, then yeah, by all means, you know, maybe have like one more than the recommended dose, but don't go too nuts.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that people start slow
Yeah, exactly.
and build up the
Yeah,
tolerance. So
absolutely.
yeah, definitely. Now, what other lifestyle changes or lifestyle habits do you think are at least as important as utilizing functional mushrooms to stay happy, healthy, and productive? So, like, what are your success habits, if you want?
Yeah, mine really is the meditation, breath work, stretching has been an incredible thing. The, you know, exercise, these are all things that I'm sure a lot of people would just list off, but for me they are real game changers that haven't been easy for me at all. I really struggled with weight quite a lot as a teenager, even as an adult. So for me, just implementing a morning routine which is based around, you know, I do like the concepts within spiritual practice of grounding yourself, of starting the day with a meditation that is allowing you to be connected but free of the self, free of the noise, free of all the distractions. You're just connecting with whatever you want to call it, source energy, just the, hey, I'm awake and I'm existing. Doing that is really important. And then I like to, on the mental side of things, gratitude lists are really important. Taking stock of whatever's happened during the day then allows me not to be too hard on myself and set unrealistic goals. It allows me to really understand where I've come in the past weeks, months, years, and then allow me to implement that stuff. Because the issue with lifestyle changes is, I think, at least for me, there can be a reaction which is sort of like parent adult, and you go, I should be doing this. Why am I not doing this? I must be doing this. And the more you go, come on, you should be doing this, the inner child in you kind of has a weird response where it goes like, oh, I don't want to. Why are you making me do all these things? So it's about, if I find the gratitude throughout the day, then that allows me to, it's almost like I'm walking with myself rather than trying to tell myself to do things. It's almost like, see how good it was when you did XYZ. Wasn't that great? You know, and it's like a friend. And it is that, just that self-nurturing, self-love, and doing, really important is doing things that give you joy. Being able to find the moments where you can laugh, where you can sing, dance, be creative, whatever it is you like doing, gardening, whatever it is that's your thing that is not intimately connected to your work. And I know some people really their passion is absolutely their work. But everyone has some sort of hobby that is something little, something that just gives them that break, whether it's reading a book that is a novel that's not a novel about the thing that you're thinking about, just as the great trumpeter Miles Davis said, it's about the notes in between the notes. The space in between the notes is where you're at, that time where you're like, okay, that's going on, but actually that space in between, to give myself that break, it's important to be able to recharge, take stock, reflect, and then carry on as you were before,
Yeah, it's so important, especially the fun part, because I feel that oftentimes that's the first thing people eliminate from their lives.
Right.
Things get busy, so the fun is eliminated. Let's just keep working. Now, is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience today?
So I'm a musician as well. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Mm.
And for me, the creative side of things is really important. And that's why I implore people to, if they have that little thing, just to kind of keep it safe and capture that creativity, whatever it is you like doing, to not get burnt out, I think.
Yeah. So where can people find you if they would like to maybe listen to your music or get a consultation or just connect with you?
Yeah, brilliant. So my fungi website, consultation website is thefungiconsultant.com. And then there's my Linktree, which is just Linktree/Oli Genn-Bash, all one word. And there you can connect with me on all different social medias. I have, articles, podcast recordings, talks that I've done as well. So it just gives you a bit of more of a window into me.
Perfect. Oli, thank you so much for sharing all those tips and insights with all of us today. It was so much fun and I really enjoyed it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it. Thanks, Claudia.
Keep up the great work and take care.
Thanks.
And talk to you soon.
You too. Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Wired for Success podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you did, please take a sec to rate and review my show or share it with a friend. That way you can support the show and help me reach and support other entrepreneurs like yourself as well. If you would like my help to figure out how you can go from overwhelmed and overworked hustler to empowered and confident leader, check out my website at www.wiredforsuccess.solutions and book a free 20-minute strategy session with me. Can't wait to help you get wired for success. Until next time, take care. Bye.